Hello YouTubers, welcome to Riding with Randy. My name is Randy Jones and I am an avid motorcyclist who actually enjoys doing my own modifications and maintenance on my bikes. And I thought some of you might be interested in seeing how to do some of those things. So I decided to make a series of videos to share. We'll be doing things like installation of parts and general routine maintenance on various bikes. So please come join us and tag along. Guys, welcome to Riding with Randy. This is actually going to be my first installation video. What we're going to be doing today is installing a aftermarket exhaust system on a 2017 FZ7. This is my buddy's bike. We're going to talk a little bit about exhaust systems in general because some thought needs to put into that when you're choosing an exhaust system. There's basically two major types. I'm going to come around the bike over here. So on a bike, generally what you're going to see is an exhaust muffler system that's on this bike down here low. Sometimes they're under the tail. That is what deadens the sound, and basically when you replace that, it comes described as a slip-on. So a slip-on exhaust system just replaces the muffler portion of your exhaust system and basically does not do much in terms of horsepower. It does give you the nice sound you might be looking for. One convenience of that is you don't have to do anything to your ECU electronics if you just put on a slip-on. But let's come over and look on this table. My buddy's gone with a Yoshimura, which is a very nice exhaust system. He chose to get the full system, so it's going to come with a manifold. It's going to take you from the engine block back to the slip-on. And replacing the full system like this, that is when you're going to need to do some retuning on your ECU. And you can have that professionally done at some shops, or you can do what he's done, which is purchase a power commander. So in a future video, we're going to show how to install that. So once again, this is a 2017 FZ7. This is a parallel twin, which means we're going to have two cylinders. When we look at our manifold over there, you'll notice there's two pipes that come from the engine and then go down to the slip-on. So what we're going to have to do is take two bolts off each of those pipes that come from each cylinder. If you're doing a four-cylinder, obviously it'll be four pipes coming from up there. These pipes come down into one and then join the slip-on. The other thing we're going to have to do is remove this right foot peg rest, because in behind there is the hanger bolt that hangs up the factory slip-on. So we'll need to remove this rest so we can get to that hanger bolt and remove the old exhaust and then put the new one on. So we'll get some tools and get started on that. Foot peg rest here, I'm going to use a 6mm hex wrench and probably a fair amount of force, not too bad. So we'll get those off, and then we'll need to remove the bolts up the top here too. So at this point, you can now see that we probably don't need to remove these bolts. This whole setup is suspended by the rear brake line, so we're going to grab a little hanger and just hang that out of the way, and that way we won't have to mess with the brake lines at all. So as it turns out, we did not have to remove these top two bolts because there's enough slack in the brake line system here to just rotate this up and swing it out of the way, where we'll be able to get down under here to the bolts that actually hang the exhaust system from underneath the bike. So that's a 12mm bolt. There's one on each side. We're going to go ahead and remove those. And on the other side. A little bit of a tight fit. It's tucked up in there above the chain, a few inches back. So you'll need at least a 6-inch extension on your ratchet to get to that. Force on that muffler to take pressure off. I'm using my right foot there to lift that up a little. Takes pressure off the bolt, makes it easier to get out. So I actually had a little trouble there with that second bolt, because as the bolt was starting to come out, the exhaust system begins to drop. So what's going to help is if you go ahead and place a jack under that catalytic converter here, so that when the bolts begin to come out, you don't have that system dropping and putting pressure on the bolt. So we've got our jack under the manifold here supporting the exhaust system, and we're going to remove 4 bolts, 2 on each exhaust pipe coming out from the block. You can see back in here there is a 12 millimeter bolt, and then there's going to be one on the back side. You just can't quite see. 2 bolts per pipe, and then the same thing on the other side. We're going to go ahead and get those off. Got all the bolts out of the pipes going to the manifold and the bolts that were suspending the exhaust from below. We're just going to gently, very slowly let down the jack. Try to keep this thing from falling. So on this side, the oxygen sensor is still attached, and to be fair, it would be much better to go ahead and remove that before you lower the exhaust system. You guys will have the opportunity to do that. But fortunately, we managed not to overstretch the line here. I've got the jack back under just to give a little support to that. And I'm going to go ahead and take off this 17 millimeter nut holding the oxygen sensor in place. I also want to show you these are the original exhaust manifold washers, and they just fell out. All that came apart very easily. We do have new ones to replace when we put in our system. There's 2 exhaust openings. These bushings actually drop back in a recessed area up in there. They will set in the recess, and then the end of your exhaust pipes go on. Slide the clamp up and put it over the bolts, and then put the nuts on. So can be a little bit cumbersome, and might be easier if you have a second person with you to help with that, which I have. Best is we put a washer in one exhaust manifold port and position that pipe on that side to hold that in place, angled it out so that the washer could be put in on the other side, and then reposition the pipe to hold that in. So we're just going to snug them a little bit, and then we need to visually look in there and check to make sure that our brass gaskets stayed in place. Okay, we've got the 4 bolts tied up there at the manifold. Now we're going to reinstall the oxygen sensor. So what we had to do there, this oxygen sensor wire was twisting a lot as we were screwing that back into the exhaust system. So what I ended up doing was twisting it counterclockwise fair amount, so that as you screw that in clockwise, it untwists the wire and keeps it from kinking up on you. Okay, now we're going to look back here where the new slip-on is going to suspend from. This is the factory suspension bracket here, and beside that are these 2 10 millimeter bolts. The bracket that comes with the Yoshimura has 2 10 millimeter bolts that are going to take the place of these. We won't need this apparatus, so we're going to remove that and then bolt this in those 2 holes. So now we're going to attach this exhaust hanger bracket that came with the Yoshimura. It uses these bolts that came with it. They have a 5 millimeter Allen wrench head and then a 10 millimeter bolt. And I just want to point out that there is a washer that goes on both sides, front and back. So we're going to go ahead and install that. We're going to go ahead and take the slip on here. This is just a pretty precise measurement that slides over, and actually the precision in this is enough that it creates enough seal. You don't actually have to have a clamp on that, but it can take a little twisting and pushing to get it to slide on. And when you're positioning this slip on, make sure you get the ear of that bracket inside this suspension bracket here as you're sliding that on, because you can't get it in once you've already slid it here. Is put the rear foot peg rest back in place, and then we're going to take it for a test ride. Okay, so now that we have our footrest stay back in place, we're going to need to put on these retaining springs. These go between the slip-on and the main exhaust pipe. Okay guys, so we've got it fully installed, and you can take a look at it there. Personally, I think it's a very nice looking exhaust system. You guys, I'm sure, already know what your bike sounds like before. Now we're going to start it up and see what it sounds like after, and then we're going to take it for a little ride and do a drive-by so you can hear it in running form. So let me here.